Paul Walker, the crash that shocked the world on November 30th, 2013? The world was stunned by the death of Paul Walker, the 40-year-old actor best known for his role in the Fast and Furious franchise. Walker had built a career portraying speed, control, and survival, making the reality of his death especially tragic. That afternoon, Walker attended a charity event in Santa Clarita, California. After leaving, he entered a red Porsche Carrera GT, driven by his friend Roger Rodas. The Carrera GT was a rare, high-performance supercar, famous for its power and unforgiving handling. It demanded absolute precision from its driver, especially at high speeds. At around 3:30 p.m., the car accelerated along a quiet road. Witnesses later estimated its speed at over 90 miles per hour. Moments later, the vehicle lost control, struck a curb, then a tree, and finally a light pole. The impact was catastrophic, and the car immediately caught fire. Initial reports suggested Walker died instantly, but official findings later clarified that the crash itself was not immediately fatal. He was restrained in the passenger seat as the fire spread rapidly through the vehicle. The intensity of the flames and smoke made rescue impossible within moments. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but the fire was too severe to approach. Both men were pronounced dead at the scene. Paul Walker died from a combination of traumatic injuries and fire-related effects. News of his death spread rapidly across the globe. Fans mourned not only the loss of a beloved actor, but also the cruel contrast between his on-screen image of invincibility and the reality of a sudden, irreversible accident. Paul Walker is remembered not just for his films, but for his generosity, humility, and humanitarian work, especially through his charity Reach Out Worldwide, which continues his legacy today. Ryan Dunn, a tragic end to a life without limits on June 20, 2011. The quiet roads of West Goshen Township, Pennsylvania, became the site of a devastating crash that shocked fans around the world. Behind the wheel was Ryan Dunn, a 34-year-old stunt performer best known for his work on Jackass. Dunn had built his career on pushing boundaries and taking extreme risks for entertainment. But in the early hours of that morning, it wasn't a stunt. At approximately 3:30 a.m., Dunn was driving his Porsche 911 GT3 with Zachary, a 30-year-old friend and former Navy veteran, in the passenger seat. Investigators later determined the car was traveling at an extremely high speed, estimated to be well over 100 miles per hour. On a stretch of Route 322, Dunn lost control. The vehicle left the roadway, struck a guardrail, and collided with a tree. The force of the crash destroyed the car, and a fire broke out almost immediately. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but the damage and fire made rescue impossible. Both men were pronounced dead at the scene. Authorities later confirmed that alcohol was a contributing factor in the crash. News of Dunn's death spread rapidly, leaving fans, friends, and fellow performers stunned. Many struggled to reconcile the loss with the fearless, comedic image he had built on screen. In the aftermath, the accident became a sobering reminder that real-world consequences don't stop at the edge of entertainment. Ryan Dunn is remembered for his humor, loyalty to his friends, and the impact he had on a generation of fans, but his death also stands as a cautionary story about speed, risk, and responsibility. Princess Diana the night the world stood still on August 31, 1997. Princess Diana left the Ritz Hotel in Paris with her partner, Dodi Ulf. Just after midnight, they entered a black Mercedes-Benz SA Nishikahachiju, driven by Henry Paul. As the car pulled away, paparazzi followed closely on motorcycles and in cars, attempting to capture photographs. Moments later, as the vehicle entered the Ponte Lama tunnel at high speed, it lost control and crashed into a concrete pillar. The impact was devastating. Dodi Alfred and Henry Paul were killed instantly. Princess Diana, however, survived the initial crash. First responders found her alive and conscious in the back seat. According to firefighter Xavier Gourmelon, one of the first on the scene, she looked at him and said, "Oh my God, what has happened?" Outwardly, she appeared injured but responsive. Internally, her condition was far more serious. The crash had caused severe internal injuries, including damage near her heart, leading to rapid internal bleeding. Emergency crews worked to stabilize her at the scene before transporting her to the hospital. During the journey, she drifted in and out of consciousness as doctors fought to keep her alive. At 4 a.m., after arriving at Petit Dal Salpêtrière Hospital, Princess Diana suffered cardiac arrest. Surgeons made desperate attempts to save her, but the injuries were too severe. She was officially pronounced dead at 4:53 a.m. News of her death spread across the globe within hours. Millions were stunned, refusing at first to believe the reports. In the days that followed, crowds gathered outside Kensington Palace, leaving flowers, letters, and tributes. Her funeral on September 6, 1997, was watched by an estimated 2.5 billion people worldwide. For many, it was not just the loss of a princess, but the loss of a symbol of empathy, kindness, and humanity, someone who had touched lives far beyond royalty. Dale Earnhardt Sr., the final lap on February 18, 2001, the Daytona 500 was entering its final lap. NASCAR's biggest race was moments from ending, and at the center of it all was the sport's most iconic figure, driving the black, no, tres, Chevrolet. Deruan Hado Esaru, known to fans as the Intimidator, was doing what he had done countless times before, protecting his position and helping his team secure a win. As the field charged into turn 4, everything changed. Earnhardt's car made contact with another vehicle, became unstable, and veered sharply into the outside concrete wall at an estimated 155 miles per hour. The impact was abrupt, but visually deceptive. There was no massive fire or obvious destruction. Many spectators believed Earnhardt would climb out, as he had after so many hard crashes in his career, inside the cockpit. However, the damage was catastrophic. The sudden deceleration caused a basilar skull fracture, a severe injury at the base of the skull where it meets the spine. Emergency crews reached the car almost immediately, but Earnhardt was unresponsive. He was transported to Halifax Medical Center, where doctors attempted to revive him. At 5:16 p.m., Dale Earnhardt Sr. was pronounced dead. The loss stunned the racing world. A driver who had survived decades of high-speed danger, who seemed almost invincible on the track, was suddenly gone. In the aftermath, NASCAR underwent sweeping safety reforms. The Hans device became mandatory. Car designs and tracks began installing safer barriers to reduce the force of impacts. Earnhardt's death marked a turning point in motorsport safety. His legacy lives on, not only through his victories and influence on racing, but through the changes that have saved countless lives since that final lap. Cut in half in the early 1980s, German police responded to one of the most extreme highway accidents ever recorded. The crash involved a Porsche 928, a high-performance sports car capable of exceeding 160 miles per hour, traveling at extreme speed on the auto. Witnesses said the vehicle was moving so fast that surrounding traffic appeared almost motionless. The driver lost control in an instant. The car struck a guardrail with overwhelming force and was torn apart, scattering debris across the roadway. The impact was Emergency responders arriving at the scene described it as one of the most severe crashes they had ever encountered. The vehicle was completely destroyed, and the driver died immediately due to the sheer violence of the collision. The incident became infamous among German highway authorities, not only for its severity, but as a stark reminder of what happens when extreme speed overwhelms both engineering and the human body. Even a car designed for performance offered no protection once physics took over. Roger Williamson, July 29, 1973. The Dutch Grand Prix was rolling on at Zandvoort, with thousands of spectators packed into the grandstands and sprawled across the grassy banks like it was a summer festival instead of a Formula One race. On the grid that day was Roger Williamson, just 25 years old, fresh into Formula One, and still trying to convince the world he belonged there. He was young, hungry, and seen as a name to watch. 8 laps in, that future started to fall apart. At high speed, Williamson's car suffered a tire failure. In a blink, it left the racing line, slammed into the barriers, and flipped. When it stopped, the car was upside down. Fuel spilled. Fire followed almost immediately. And crucially, Williamson was still alive. The crash hadn't killed him. Being trapped did. Strapped in and inverted, he couldn't free himself. Smoke began to rise, then flames. Another driver, David Purley, pulled over without hesitation and sprinted across the track. He tried to shove the car back onto its wheels using nothing but his hands. It didn't budge. The fire spread faster. Purley yelled for help. The marshals hesitated. They weren't equipped. No fireproof suits, no proper training. 4 minutes that mattered far too much. They kept their distance from the burning car. From inside, Williamson could be heard. He was conscious, aware, struggling as smoke thickened and heat built up. The crowd watched, frozen. Pearlie grabbed a fire extinguisher and emptied it into the flames, but it barely made a difference. Time dragged on in the worst way possible. Heat, smoke, and a lack of air turned the cockpit into a trap with no exit. After several minutes, the fire overtook the car completely. The noise from inside stopped. When proper rescue vehicles finally arrived, it was already over. All of this happened live on television. Millions watched a young driver die, not instantly, but slowly, while help stood just meters away. The shock rippled through the racing world. Williamson's death became a brutal spotlight on Formula One's safety failures and the painfully inadequate emergency response that day. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more stories like this, and drop your suggestions for the next one in the comments.